Dad shouted, "You give nothing to our family." Then he told me to leave his house and not be selfish. So I left quietly. 3 weeks later, I got 20 missed calls from my sister asking, "Why did the rent stop?" I just replied, "I thought I wasn't giving anything to this family, so I stopped." Then it was funny because this golden family started falling apart without me, and later My name is Jake. Growing up, I always had this nagging feeling that my family didn't really see me as a person, more like a wallet with legs. Of course, it didn't start that way. At first, it was small things like helping me pay a bill here and there when I got my first real job. Then it became regular requests. Then it became expectations. By the time I was 24, living in the city, working 2 jobs just to get by, my parents had basically decided that they didn't need to work hard anymore. My dad cut back his hours at the auto shop to enjoy life more. My mother stayed home saying she deserved a break after raising us. My sister couldn't hold down a part-time job without quitting after 2 months. And somehow that was my problem, too. I paid for everything. Food when the fridge was empty. Dad's truck insurance when he forgot my sister's rent because she was always between paychecks. After a while, I didn't even think about it. It was just normal. They had convinced me that this was what family did. I didn't realize how messed up it was until it finally blew up in my face. It happened one Sunday when I went to visit them. Dad mentioned very casually that he wanted a new car. Not just any car, some ridiculous brand new SUV that he definitely didn't need. He wanted me to co-sign the loan because his credit was garbage. I said no. I told him I was already stretched thin trying to juggle my own bills and their endless needs. I thought maybe he'd understand, maybe he'd even respect it. Instead, he lost it. He stood up in the middle of the living room and started yelling, telling me I wasn't contributing to the family. Said if I wasn't going to be part of the solution, I shouldn't be part of their lives at all. Told me to leave and not come back until I could stop being selfish. I just stood there for a second and took it all in. Not one person said anything in my defense. Not my mother, not my sister. They just sat there like I was an outsider causing trouble. So I left quietly. No argument, no scene. Just picked up my keys and walked out. The first few days after that were weird, like I was detoxing. My phone stayed silent. No texts. No. "Can you send me $50 requests?" No guilt trips. It felt weird at first, like I was waiting for something bad to happen, but nothing did. And after about a week, I realized that I felt good, free even. 3 weeks passed. Then one morning, I woke up to 20 missed calls from my sister. 20. I didn't even listen to the voicemails. I already knew what they were about. I finally texted her back. I thought I wasn't contributing to this family, so I stopped paying. Nothing for hours. Then a flood of texts. Accusations. Accusations. Screaming through the screen. "Why didn't you pay the rent? We're being evicted. Mom's freaking out. Dad's mad. What's wrong with you?" I stared at the messages and for the first time in my life, I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because of how quickly everything was falling apart without me holding it together. And I decided then this wasn't just going to be a clean break. I was going to let them feel it. For once, I was going to be the one watching from a distance as they struggled. And that was just the beginning. After I sent that text, I turned off my phone and decided not to think about them. For the first time in years, I spent a weekend doing exactly what I wanted to do. No surprise phone calls asking for money. No last-minute emergencies that somehow always became my responsibility. It was like finally breathing fresh air after years of living in a smoke-filled room. By the middle of the following week, the silence from my family broke. I started getting random texts from old relatives I hadn't heard from in months. An aunt I barely knew texted me a cheesy quote about family sticking together in hard times. My uncle sent me a "hope you're okay" text that smacked suspiciously of a fishing expedition. Then my cousin Tyler, who actually had a spine, reached out to me. We weren't close, but he always kept it real. His message was short. "Heard your folks are losing it. Guess they're learning what happens when the bank closes." I called him back to find out more. Tyler told me everything. My sister got evicted because I stopped paying her rent and she had to crawl back home. My dad's truck insurance ran out and he got a ticket. Mom started picking fights with anyone who wouldn't give her money. She even tried to rally the rest of the family, but no one would get involved. First, I just listened and shook my head. I honestly couldn't believe how quickly everything was falling apart without me. It got better. My sister had always been the golden one, the one who could do no wrong, the one everyone bent over backwards to protect. Now she was stuck back in her childhood bedroom, fighting with my parents over money, chores, everything. Tyler said the neighbors could hear her screaming some nights. Meanwhile, my dad was back to picking up extra shifts at the auto shop. My mom, who hadn't worked in years, tried to get a part-time job at a local boutique, but quit after 2 weeks because it was too stressful. The pity party didn't pay her anymore. About a month after I left, I came home one night to find a crumpled envelope tucked under my apartment door. No stamp, no address. Inside was a handwritten letter. I immediately recognized my mother's handwriting. It was exactly what I expected. A rambling mess about how much they miss me, how families fight, but always come back together, and how maybe if I could help just a little with rent and bills, things would be easier for everyone. It ended with, "You'll always have a home with us, Jake." I laughed out loud right there in the hallway. They weren't sorry. They didn't miss me. They missed what I had done for them. They missed the free money, the stability I brought while they sat around doing nothing. I left the letter folded on the floor and had the cleaning crew throw it away later. The next week, they called Mom, Dad, even my sister, who hadn't spoken to me directly since I stopped paying her rent. They flooded my phone with calls, voicemails, texts. Some were apologetic, some were angry. Some sounded like they couldn't decide if they were angry or sorry or desperate. First, I ignored them. But then I realized ignoring them wasn't enough. They needed to understand, really finally understand, that I was done being their crutch. They needed to feel exactly what it was like to be abandoned. As if they were abandoning me the second I said no. So I decided to do something more permanent. And it started with one simple decision. I wasn't going to just shut the door. I was going to burn the whole damn bridge. The first thing I did was block it. Not just my parents and my sister, every single person even remotely connected to them who might try to sneak through and mediate. I wasn't going to give them another chance to drag me back into their mess. After that, I went further. I looked around my apartment one night and thought about how close I had come to signing another 1-year lease. How easily I could have stayed stuck in the same cycle, feeling guilty and bled because that's what I'd always done. Not anymore. I called my landlord the next morning and told him I wasn't renewing. 2 more months and I was gone. At first, I didn't know where I was going. Somewhere warm. Somewhere where no one knew my name. Somewhere I could start over. I stayed up late scrolling through ads, looking at jobs, apartments, everything. When Miami came up, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Sunshine, ocean, energy. Everything about it screamed new life. It wasn't even a debate. Miami. It was while I was quietly planning my escape. My family was falling apart without me. I didn't have to look for updates. Tyler, God bless him, kept me in the loop without me even asking. My sister couldn't find a new place to live because of her eviction record. She tried moving in with friends, but apparently she lasted less than 2 weeks before they kicked her out for not paying her share of the bills. Classic. She ended up back with my parents, and the 3 of them were now trapped together. Broke, angry, and accustomed to blaming me for their problems. Only now there was no one left to save them. Dad's truck finally broke down completely. He couldn't afford repairs, let alone a new car, and had to start taking the bus to his job, which was humiliating for a guy like him. Mom took a part-time job as a cashier, which she absolutely hated. They started fighting so loudly that the neighbors could hear through the walls. In a small town, word travels fast. Everyone knew the Golden family was falling apart. And I sat in my almost empty apartment, sipping coffee and enjoying every second of it. About 6 weeks after the big explosion, just as I was getting everything ready to move, my sister broke down. She emailed me. It started with the usual fake sweetness, saying they miss me, saying they realized how much I did for them, saying that family should stick together. Then buried in the second paragraph like it was no big deal, she slipped in the real reason she was reaching out. If you could just help us out a little while until we get back on our feet, it would mean the world." I stared at the email for a minute, laughing. They still didn't get it. They still thought that if they said the right things, I'd come running back like always, wallet open and pride swallowed. Not this time. I just said, "I'm not your bank anymore. Good luck." Then I blocked their email. I thought that was the end of it. I figured they'd give up eventually and find someone else to sponge off. Maybe a distant cousin, maybe the church, maybe some poor schmuck who didn't know any better. But about a week later, as I was packing up the last of my boxes, getting ready to drive out and leave it all behind, there was a knock at my door. I didn't even have to look through the peephole. I knew it. It was my dad. He was standing there head in hand as if he hadn't kicked me out of his house 2 months before. I opened the door just enough to hear what he had to say. I opened the door just enough to see him standing there. My dad, the same guy who yelled that I wasn't contributing and told me to leave like I was some burden he couldn't wait to get rid of. He looked rough, older somehow, like the weight of the last 2 months had crushed something inside him. No fake tough guy act. No yelling. Just standing there head in hand like he didn't know what to do with himself. He said they needed me, that things had gotten worse than they thought. The mortgage was 2 months late. Utilities were about to be cut off. My sister was unemployed, depressed, and locked in her old bedroom all day. He talked like he was listing someone else's problems, not the ones he helped create. Then came the kicker. He said he wanted me to move back in. Said I could live rent-free if I would help out with the bills, groceries, maybe take over the car payment that he couldn't afford anymore. The same house I was kicked out of. The same people who stood by while he humiliated me. Now he wanted me to come back and make it all right for them like nothing ever happened. I almost laughed in his face, but instead I kept my voice flat and said, "I'm moving to Miami next week. You figure out your own life." He blinked as if he hadn't even processed the words. I watched him open his mouth to argue, to plead, to threaten, but nothing came out. He just stood there frozen. I slowly closed the door, not slamming it, not saying another word, just shut it. I thought that was it. I thought it would be the last time they tried. I was wrong. Later that night, I received a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't going to let them ruin my night. When I finally checked it out, it was my mom, but not the passive-aggressive version I was used to. She was crying, real crying, ugly, gasping, saying she was sorry, saying they should have treated me better, said they didn't realize what they had until it was gone. And just when I felt a flicker of something, some stupid leftover loyalty, she dropped the real reason she was calling. If you loved us, you'd help. There it was, the truth plain as day. It was never about missing me. It was about missing what I had done for her. I deleted the voicemail without even finishing it. The next morning, as I was loading the last of my things into my car, something unexpected happened. There was another knock on my door. This time, it wasn't my father. It was my sister. I almost didn't recognize her. No makeup, messy hair, and a hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. She looked completely broken. She wasn't trying to be tough. She didn't yell or blame. She just asked if I could help. Said they didn't know what to do anymore. That maybe if I just gave them a little until things got better. I asked her a question. When Dad kicked me out, when Mom sat there and let it happen, when you watched and didn't say a word, did you think about helping me? She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I nodded and got in my car and drove away. No anger. No speeches. No tears. Just the engine starting and the city shrinking in my rearview mirror. I wasn't just leaving the apartment. I left my whole life behind. Crossing into Florida felt like crossing into a whole new life. I drove with the windows down. Even though the air was heavy with heat, I didn't care. Every mile I put between me and that miserable city was like peeling off another layer of old skin. When I finally rolled into Miami, tired and dusty, it didn't feel like running away. It felt like finally arriving somewhere I was supposed to be. I got a little apartment not far from the beach. Nothing luxurious, but it was clean, bright, and quiet. Paid for entirely with my own money. No handouts, no strings attached. I also found a job faster than I expected. Decent pay, decent people. Nobody knew my last name. Nobody asked questions about my family. And for the first time in years, nobody expected anything of me. I began to live like a real person. Weekend walks to the beach, trying new restaurants, sleeping late without feeling guilty. Slowly, the weight I didn't even know I was carrying began to disappear. For the first time since I could remember, my phone stayed silent. No emergencies, no begging, no passive-aggressive messages. I thought maybe, just maybe, they got the hint. But it turns out that people who are used to living off you don't just forget about you overnight. About a month after settling in, it started small. A strange friend request from an account with no picture. Then another. Then random text from numbers I didn't know. Things like, "Hey, is this Jake? We met at a party." Or, "Bro, you selling that couch?" Totally fake. I ignored them, blocked everything. But the more I ignored it, the more it escalated. One morning, I found a letter taped to my apartment door. No stamp, no envelope, just a piece of paper folded once. It was written in handwriting that I recognized immediately. It was from my mother. She had found me. The letter was all over the place. First, she apologized, then blaming me for leaving, then talking about how hard life had been without me, saying that if I had any love left in my heart, I would come home. It wasn't even signed properly, just a sloppy love. Mom. I read it once. Then I tore it up and threw it in the trash. I had made my decision when I left. There was no coming back. Later that day, Tyler texted me. He said he'd overheard some family gossip. My mom had told some people that I was living like a king in Miami while they were struggling to survive. She said it was selfish of me not to send something back to help them. She made it sound like I left them out of greed. No mention of the years I paid their bills. No mention of the truck insurance, the groceries, my sister's rent. No mention of the day I was kicked out because I refused to destroy my credit to buy a car I didn't need. Just that story they spun to make themselves the victims. It burned at first. The idea that they could twist everything like that they could rewrite history in real time. But then it hit me. Let them talk. Let them cry to anyone who would listen because none of it changed the truth. I was free. I was living a better life without them. And that freedom was eating them alive. I knew deep down they would never recover from losing me. And I hadn't even delivered the final blow. I knew that eventually they would find a way to reach out to me again. Parasites don't just give up when they lose their host. They get desperate. They crawl. They beg. It happened one quiet afternoon. I was sitting in a small cafe on the beach, the sun burning gently into my shoulders, feeling more at peace than I had in years. My phone buzzed once on the table. An email, some random address I didn't recognize. The subject line, "Please read." I almost deleted it without thinking, but something about it made me open it anyway. It was my dad. The email wasn't long. No anger, no insults, just a tired, broken tone like a man who had been stripped down to nothing. He said the bank was taking the house. They had missed too many payments. Mom's health was deteriorating. Stress, depression, a cocktail of things they never thought would actually happen to them. My sister was still unemployed and now back under their roof. 3 grown adults trapped together in a house that wasn't even theirs anymore. He said they needed help, that they needed me. As I read it, I didn't feel anger. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt absolutely nothing. There was a time when I would have jumped up, gone to fix it, thrown it all away because that's what good sons are supposed to do. But I had changed. They hadn't just hurt me once. They had built a whole life on the idea that I would bleed for them without complaint. And now the bleeding had stopped. I finished my coffee, took my time, stared out at the endless ocean. When I finally answered, I kept it simple. "I'm not coming back. I owe you nothing. Please don't contact me again." I hit send, blocked the email address, and then I sat there in the sunshine, feeling freer than I had ever felt in my entire life. A few weeks later, Tyler texted me like some unofficial messenger from the universe. He told me that the house was officially gone. My parents had moved to a tiny apartment across town, one of those crumbling buildings they used to look down on when they had money to pretend they were better than everyone else. My sister was still job hopping, still blaming the world for her problems. Apparently, They spent most of their days fighting each other. Everyone pointing fingers, each refusing to admit the truth. I wasn't part of their world anymore. And the best part was they knew it. They could tell any story they wanted. They could whine to whatever distant relatives would still listen. I didn't care because while they were busy drowning in the consequences of their own selfishness, I was building a life that was finally mine. No guilt, no debts, no chains. A few months later, I signed the lease on a slightly larger apartment a few blocks closer to the beach. I got a promotion at work. I met new people, good people who didn't see me as a walking ATM. Sometimes as I walk along the boardwalk at sunset, I think about how easy it would have been to stay trapped. How easily I could have spent my whole life trying to earn the love of people who only loved what I could do for them. But now they're stuck in the wreckage of their own making. And I watched the sun sink into the ocean free. An update. It's been a little over a year now. Miami feels like home in a way that nothing else ever did. I've built a real life here. Better job, better apartment, better people around me. No one asks for money. No one expects me to solve their problems. It's like living a completely different life. Most days I don't even think about my old life. But something happened last week. I was buying groceries at a small market I sometimes go to minding my own business when I heard someone call my name. At first I thought it was just my imagination. No one here calls me Jake. Not like that. I turned around and there she was, my sister, standing by the produce section, looking completely out of place, like a ghost from the past. She looked different, thinner, worn down, older than she should have looked at her age. She was wearing a cheap tourist shirt, as if she were just visiting. She was carrying a shopping basket with nothing in it. For a second, either of us said anything. Then she smiled, that fake little smile she always used when she wanted something. She said she was visiting Miami. Said she heard from someone that I lived here. Said she just happened to be passing through this neighborhood. I didn't believe a word of it. She asked me how I was doing, made some awkward small talk, and then like clockwork, it slipped out. She said Mom and Dad were struggling more than ever. Dad had lost his job. Mom's health had taken a turn for the worse. They were about to lose their apartment. Things were bad, really bad. She said they could use some help. Just a little, just until they were back on their feet. Like no time had passed, like nothing had changed. I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. When she finally stopped talking and looked at me with that expectant, hopeful look, I just nodded once and walked away. No drama, no anger, no second chances. I finished my shopping, paid for my groceries, and left. That night, sitting on my balcony with the ocean breeze in my face, I realized something. It didn't matter how far I ran or how much time passed. They would never stop trying. They would keep coming back, scratching at the door, as long as they thought there was something left to take. But the difference now was simple. I knew better, and they no longer had anything I wanted. I sipped my drink, stared out at the lights of the city, and smiled to myself. Some people never change, but thank God I had.